Appreciate it. Good afternoon. And before I start, Mrs. Thayer, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Those AP Lit students, the 86, this is not the grammar portion. So just tell them to tune out. Listen to the content. Live music matters. Now, in the state of our current techno world, catch-all phrases are made every single day. But as they go, live music matters. That's a good one. I want to tell you a few little stories. I want to share a few little stories with you. Larry John Wilson, one of Georgia's most phenomenal and greatest songwriters, born and raised in Augusta, Georgia, passed away a few years ago. But I had the honor and to be his friend for many years. And Larry John was not only known for his songwriting, but he was also known for his Larry John-isms. And through the experience of being with Larry John and having Larry John perform and getting to know him and getting to love him, I was fortunate enough to be able to actually share in the creation of one of his isms. When Larry John and I would talk on the phone, we would say to each other, well, you're going to get there early enough to share a few little stories, correct? And what that phrase meant was Larry John was prone to like to sip a little B&B. And Larry John said that anything that the Benedictine monks made so wonderfully well, that he enjoyed so much, had to be a blessing from God. And it was his duty to pay his respect to the monks that created that brandy by sipping it. And I would tend to have just a little sip of something myself while we were sharing these stories. And so our catchphrase to each other became, well, he talked like a real Southern gentleman, and he was the voice on Turner for a long time. And he would say, son, I'm going to be up there in time for us to share a few little stories. And we did, and it was a wonderful thing. The stories like that, I think, is the true meaning of why we're here today. And that's the theme of the event, community. There's anywhere there would be a community of songwriters, there's going to be a like-mindedness. There's going to be a spirit of sharing. There's going to be a spirit of crossover in what goes on. And that's regardless of the genre. Not just in the songwriter world or the pop world or the hip-hop world, but it's just the nature of the beast. Because every song is really a story. And every story and every song is really a reflection, a mirrored reflection of what happens in the day-to-day episode of these folks' lives. It's the ups, it's the downs, it's the crossover, but it's a mirrored reflection of what happens to them. So my guess is that when you hear this phrase, live music matters, and you all are sitting there with possibly on your devices, and I know that I've seen multiple devices among you, that you probably have at least 1,000 songs, if not more, on those devices. So that being the case, then why does live music matter? In the songwriter's world and in the place where the magic can happen, I look at it as 3 congruent circles. One of those circles is the artist. One of those circles is the listener. One of those circles is the venue. And there's a little bitty fertile place right in the middle where they cross that really gives the opportunity for magic to happen, where the songwriter and the audience really connect. The artist. Most likely, if you've followed someone, if you've downloaded their songs, if you've gone to their shows, this person has been developing for a long time. sometimes from childhood, sometimes from their high school or college years, sometimes, like in the case of Larry John Wilson, after he had a career as a chemical engineer in Augusta, had raised a family before he ever wrote his first song. But that developmental time, regardless of when it falls, has a common thread. The common thread is talent, lots of talent, and unending work ethic and diligence, an absolute connection with someone to hear their songs, a listener, and then being in the right spot at the right time. When Shawnee's song, Lullaby, started climbing the charts and just really exploded who Shawnee Mullins was, every single rag in our industry, every single one of them, the new artist from Atlanta, Georgia, Shawnee Mullins, the new artist, Sean Mullins. Well, now, when I met Sean, the drinking age in Atlanta and in Georgia was 18 years old. And I was working at a little place called the Trackside Tavern. And there was this young songwriter hanging out, and his name was Sean Mullins, and he wasn't old enough to drink. True story. Shawnee got into a van with his puppy. He crisscrossed our land several times. He produced about 10 records on his own, played on every street corner, played in every coffee shop, played in every single bar where he could catch an ear, and peddled those records for years. But he was a new artist when Lullaby hit. Shawnee wouldn't have been there if it hadn't have been for those folks supporting him, listeners out there saying, I hear this song. I hear something in this song. I want to buy this record. I want to have a part of you in my life. The next and maybe most important ingredient of all this is the listener, is you. I'd say chances are really good that if we polled just this room, not counting Mrs. Thayer's students, but just this room, and asked you who your favorite songwriter was, unless it's like your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your significant other you're sitting beside, and even then, probably, the chances are really good that the person beside you is not going to have the same answer as you do. And you know, that's a beautiful thing. That's what makes music and live music such a beautiful thing. And it's important because you have the capacity and you have capability, especially in our world today, to do what you like and to make your music exactly like you like it. Now, when I was a kid growing up in Stockbridge, Georgia, there was no FM dial yet. I'm not that old, but honestly, there was no FM dial. There was AM radio. That's what we listened to. And on the radio, you could hear a cut from Frank Sinatra, and then you'd hear a cut from the Beatles, and then you'd hear a cut from Doris Day, and then you'd hear a cut from the Louvin Brothers, and then you'd hear a cut from the Beach Boys, and they were beside each other. Our music wasn't genrefied. Our music, we weren't told this is the kind of music this is. We were told, here's the music, pick up your phone and dial, because you had to dial, and there was a line attached to the phone. If you like this song, let us know, and we'll play it again in 2 hours. And that's how radio operated. It was listener, audience-driven. Right now, there's probably, and I should know this exactly, but I don't because they keep changing. But I know if you picked up your Billboard magazine, there would be at least 25 genres of rated, charted, different sorts of music. That's just in Billboard. There's another poll, R&R, Radio and Records, who's been in business for 40 years, but their last issue is going to be on June the 5th. Now that speaks to where we are in our world of music, but because of the fact that we mentioned those devices and all that you have with you and all those songs you have on those, we'll never be in a place where you, the listener, if not the most important, are certainly a very important part of that wheel. The venue. There's probably none of you out there that aren't adoring of some artist or another that doesn't want to be able to say, you know, I saw that guy win, I saw that girl win, I saw that band win. A great example of that's another little story I'm going to share with you. Just a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago, a friend of mine, John Paul White, was going to open for another friend of ours, Alice Peacock. This was going to be on a Friday night at Eddie's Attic. Will Hogue was scheduled to play the next night, the Saturday night at Eddie's Attic. Will Hogue calls me up, Eddie, I've screwed up. My wife's birthday's on Saturday. I got to switch to Friday night. And I said, well, that's Alice Peacock, and we all know Alice, so I'll call her and see. So I ring up Alice. Alice, Will's got to switch with you Friday to Saturday. Is that okay with you? She said, absolutely, let's do that. But you call John Paul and arrange that with him because I'm en route and I'm out of town and everything. And I said, no problem. So I call up John Paul and say, John Paul, Alice has to switch to Saturday night. John Paul says, Eddie, my son's birthday's Saturday. I can't switch to Saturday night. So I said, okay. So I call back up to Will and I say, Will, John Paul was going to open for Alice on Friday, but he can't switch to Saturday. Can he play with you? Can he open for you at Eddie's on Friday, and just like it was planned? Will says, absolutely, no problem, that's fine. So I call up John Paul. John Paul, it's okay for you to open for Will on Friday. John Paul says, well, Eddie, there's another factor here. I got thrown into a writer's publisher's retreat up in Nashville with this girl from California. Her name's Joy Williams. We not only wrote some really good songs, but we really enjoy performing them together, and we really like each other. And it's really sort of a cool thing. Can I bring her that night? Because I'd already asked Alice, and she had said yes. And I said, JP, it's fine with me, but I got to call Will and ask him because it's his show. Will, this is Eddie. John Paul can open on Friday, but he met this girl in Nashville, and Will says, oh. And they really like what they're doing, and he asked if it's okay if she comes with him. Her name's Joy Williams. Will says, fine, that's fine. Now, you did me a favor, that's absolutely fine. I love JP, tell her to bring her on. So this Friday shows up. Will does his sound check. He finishes his sound check. He's over at the bar with his tour mate, having a little supper, probably sharing a little story as well. It's Will and his tour mate, it's the sound man, Shalom Aberly, it's a couple of bartenders setting the bar up, and me in the room, and that's it. And so Joy and JP go up to start their sound check. And we had just billed them as Joy Williams and John Paul White because they didn't have a band name at the time. And they start, and the very first chord, and the very first word, and the very first sound out of their mouths, and there was no debating. This was magic. It was absolute magic. This story gets even better. Shalom Aberly, who's also a very talented artist, who's the sound man, burns him a board tape. They were driving back to Nashville that night, so on the way back to Nash Vegas, they popped the CD into the CD player and listened to that board tape going back. They liked it so much, they decided on that ride back to Nash Vegas to put up a little website, come up with a name for the act, give it away to anybody that wanted it, decided to call themselves the Civil Wars, had about 600,000 free downloads of that little 6-song set they did at Eddie's Attic. And I believe started what in the last few years is the most beautiful story that I've heard in our business. Because not only did they do this, and not only are they really, really, really nice people, but they kept everything right there. Their publishing, their songs, their booking, their management. It's all right here. And they did it at a pace that was perfect for them. They did it that way because they learned through the community, through being a part of the community of songwriters. Neither of these folks were brand new. Neither of these folks were new artists. They had been having solo careers for years and had been trying to write songs and trying to get songs published and working hard and being diligent and playing every single little spot that would give them an ear. There will be no more 150-seat room shows for the Civil Wars. I can promise you that. These little stories like this go on. And Miss Thayer, if I wasn't such a slow talker, I could have told your students a lot more of these little stories. But I'm not going to be able to today. But they're indicative that community in the songwriters world is absolute. It can't exist without it. And it can't exist without the artist, without the listener, and without the venue. I'm very excited to be part of a new little collaboration that's going on up in Duluth, Georgia at the Red Clay Theater. It's a project that is being sponsored by the city of Duluth, by songwriters and a little foundation that I'm a part of, and hopefully by the corporate world. It's going to be based on a mission and a purpose and a goal of keeping the wheels turning. And if you're a young person or you're an old person and you want to be a part of one of those wheels, there's going to be a place not only for you to enter, not only as your own education as a pupil, but there'll be a spot where you will also be a teacher. And it's a beautiful concept. And I'm really as excited about this as anything I've done in a long time. And I think that it really has a chance to work, but it couldn't without the municipality, the city of Duluth, without the songwriters community, and without the corporate community of Gwinnett County, including, and certainly not slighting, the Chamber of Commerce, my dear friends. It's that kind of community, it's that kind of thinking, it's that kind of process that lets a songwriter's world exist. I hope that you all, if you get the opportunity, either in Decatur or up in Duluth, will come and share a few stories, because I have some more, and I have a few sips. We'll do that too. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks to Unbounded. Thanks to TED. Thank you all. Thanks, Todd. Thank you.